Hello and welcome to another episode of GM Tips. GM Rick here. And yes, we're going into the thing that you guys have been waiting for that I promised. It is Numenera and all things Numenera. So we're going to start out a little bit. And again, I haven't gone through the core book as deeply as I have just the beginner's thing, but I get the gist of the game type. And the thing I like about Numenera, it's very similar. There's differences, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to put the two together and say they're exactly the same, but it's very similar to Open Legend. Open Legend and that group there has a very similar type of setup where you've got different types of cards that you can do. So in this case, in this game, GM intrusions and XP cards, as well as a very simplified system of roleplay. And for those of you that really like the simplified system, again, I'm not against it. I enjoy it too at times. And I think that has to be really kind of the thing going on there is that, you know, with these type of things, we've got to come up with what are the systems. And simplification sometimes for the GM makes it much easier because the GM can focus into the role play versus the mechanics. And the mechanics are pretty straightforward in these things. And I think, sorry, I'm just kind of getting things ready. We ended Tom and Jerry, so I don't want mini GM going, Dad! So I'm putting it on to just some background sounds. So you guys will hear some relaxing sounds in the background. But, again, sorry I got out of the rhythm there. The thing I like about it is the simplification factor. Because then you can focus on allowing players to be much more about what they want their character to do. Now, with this system, and I'll go through some of this, and the great thing is, Starter Set Book 2 is for the GMs. So they give you a Book 1 and a Book 2, plus they give you some basic character outlines and outlays. Now, if you take a look, the system is fairly straightforward with what you have. You have 3 stats that cover a lot of different areas, and that is Might, Speed, and Intellect. You get different types of heroes, which they have the Glaive, the Nano, which is kind of like the Tech Wizard. The Glaive is like the Strong Warrior type. The Jack, which is more of a stealthy type of roguey type of character. So you've got a couple different things, and what they really specialize on these type of character sheets are, you've got the 3 different stats that you can use for a variety of different DC rolls. You have skills, so you either are trained or untrained type of skill here. So as you can see, they have the different skills that this one is trained in as a Jack. So you get different skills you can work with. You got special abilities. So your special abilities are kind of like your feats. Those are the things that give you extra boosts in your DC rolls and abilities to do different things. Attacks are pretty straightforward. If you take a look down here, it is a simple DC attack, and we'll go through it a little bit, but damage is very straightforward. It is a 2, a 4, a 6, as is your abilities. So you take damage against your ability scores. Your might, your speed, and your intellect. And you start with might and then work your way down until you've gone through all your skill scores and you're done at that point. You are gone. Your ciphers. What are ciphers? Ciphers are different items, kind of almost like magic items. They're not quite that, but they can be a little bit of anything. So they give you a level and they give you a type of item it is, and then what can it do? And ciphers, you can only have about a handful of them, so 2 to 3 at a time. And you can use these ciphers to enhance what you're trying to do as a character. You have oddities. Oddities are kind of unique things that you can either trade in or work with. And then you've got your equipment. And you basically deal in trade with these type of items. So let's go through a little bit and let's talk a little bit about this. So let's talk about how to build. So we're going to start here in Book 1. It's fairly straightforward, okay? You're going to develop your ability scores. and your ability scores are determined at the beginning of the game. And you basically build the character sheets up and build those type of things. Now, outside of these, so what are the different scores? So we talked about might. Might basically is how strong and durable you are. How much punishment can your character take? So it's a concept of like strength, endurance, constitution, hardiness, physical prowess, all rolled into one thing. And all those play against that. It isn't size-based. You can be small to large and be pretty mighty. Basically, it is an absolute measurement you can use. And it governs things for like, so if you want to knock down a door, you want to lift something, you want to drag somebody, you want to carry stuff, you want to cause physical damage. That's where might plays in. Speed. Basically, how quick are you? So that is dexterity, agility, quickness, movement, reflexes, all these different types of things. It governs things like if you want to try to dodge an attack, you want to sneak around quietly, you want to climb something, you want to do an acrobatic jump across a ledge. These all play into fact. Or how quick you are to pick a pocket or disable a trap. All these things go into that speed stat. Intellect. Basically, it's how smart, wise, knowledgeable, educated, witty, charming you are. And all those play into that. So what we've done is taken a 6-stat system and combined it down to 3 stats. Now, they use things in here that are very interesting. They use what's called pool, edge, and effort. The pool is your basic measurement of a stat. So, like for instance, you might have a might pool of 18 where another person has a might pool of 10. It just depends, and it's based on the basic stat measurement. So here, like the 12 is your pool, okay? Your edge then becomes, so though your pool is the basic measurement, your edge is very important as well. It's something where you are required to spend points from your stat pool in order to give you a better result. So you can use your edge. So they gave a great example here. It says your edge can be different for each stat. For example, you could have a might edge of 1, a speed edge of 1, and an intellect of 0. Your might edge reduces the cost of spending points from your might pool in order to get something done. So everything is based off of a DC difficulty. And it's up to, I believe, a 12 is the high end of the difficulty, which is almost next to impossible. Where a 0 or a 1 is pretty good. And you can use your edge to drop that DC score down. So keep in mind that. And your special abilities can also help in that vein as well. Now, they talk about ciphers and oddities. So they've simplified a lot of things. You're not having to keep track of cash. You're not having to keep track of how do I add this stat to this to make this happen. They simplify it for you. And I know I hit simplify a lot of times. Well, there's a reason why. Ciphers and oddities. So what are these things? Basically, ciphers are the type of Numenera device that has a single use. They might allow you to fly, blast a foe at a range, or become temporarily invisible. It is a one-use, one-shot item, and you're limited to how many of those you can carry. Oddities are devices you don't have much of a practical or apparent use for. They aren't weapons or tools or wondrous things, but they're curiosities that give you a little bit of flair, so like a violin or a guitar. Shins are the currency of the ninth world. And basically, shins are any type of thing you can trade that was former tech or a former device that you trade in to get other equipment that is useful for you. Now, here's your task difficulty table. And I love this. It's very simplified. Like I say, in this case, I was wrong. It is a difficulty task from 0 to 10. And that gives you a target number. The target number is 3 times the difficulty of the task for determining what kind of roll you need on the D20 to succeed or not. And so it's a success or not a success. So you're not having to roll damage. So say you're going against a creature that has some armor. Okay, it bulks its difficulty up to, say, a 9. Okay, so you roll to hit, but then you use an edge to kind of bring it down a point from your might. So now it's an 8. So now you roll, and you roll a 10. You do a X amount of points for your weapon against that creature's stat score, against their pool. So keep in mind, this is a simplified version of how you do it. Now, what's so cool about this system? The ninth world itself, and again, I've kind of gone through the basics for you. There's more to it, but I wanted to give this to you. Now, XP awards come from a GM. It usually comes from completing a task or a difficulty. Now, you can spend these to avoid dying or having a horrible result. So keep in mind this. XP is pooled up for a reason. It allows you to use it in such a way that it helps or benefits your characters. A GM intrusion, that usually is if you so critically fail on your roll. This is the type of intrusions that we as a GM throw in there to say, oops, your roll was so epically bad that this occurred. You were so distracted that you just didn't even see that coming. It gives you a lot of flair, and they give you the cards, and I love that they do this, and you can get more of these. Now, mind you, Numenera is not a cheap game, and I'm sorry, Bondi and Shanna, I can't say that it's going to be. It's not a cheap game. You're going to lay out to get the basics to get going for the core book, the bestiary, which I've gotten, and some technology and tools, things for ciphers and oddities. You're probably going to lay out at a minimum $200 to play it. You can play for less, but you're not going to have everything you need. You're going to get some modules, some different things to get you started. Now, fortunately, in here, they give you this. And that's why, players, if you get the basic, don't read Book 2. Let me say it again. Do not read Book 2. This is GM only. Okay? Book 1, read all you want. Book 2, do not read it, or the maps. Let your GM run it for you and play. There's an easy cheat sheet. I love the cheat sheet. It gives you the ability to get started. So what do I like about this? Well, the ninth world takes on the aspect that you are dealing with Earth after 8 civilizations have risen and fallen. They have left behind items and other things from their fall. And in this time, they've made contacts with other dimensions, other worlds, other creatures. So the Earth is populated with a lot of creatures other than just humans. These are Imperiums. Think of Isaac Asimov's Imperiums. Rises and falls. Rises and falls. So you're at the beginning of the Ninth Age. The Ninth Age and the Ninth World is basically the 9th time that the Earth has come from the fall of whatever creatures were on it back up again. The base races are humans, though they have other races you can use once you get the core book. So keep in mind, you don't have to use just humans. The cool part is the things you run into. It is limitless in what you can run into. Yes, ma'am, Gio. I will try to later, okay? So, yeah, my mini GM takes all my GMing marbles and runs off with them. And then she wants me to find them. I love her. So you're pretty much limitless in where you can go. There are books that take you to the stars that you can buy. There's ones that take you to other dimensions. So Cipher System, which they came out with, kind of lets you do the beginning. So the Strange is before the Ninth Age. It's back in our time in humanity. The Ninth World and Numenera is way past this. So we're talking almost millions of years. Our sun has not died out yet. But it is quite different. And there's so many different things you can come across. And alien artifacts that it's cool. The wizards aren't necessarily spellcasters. They're people who figure out how to use tech. They could be priests. They could be other things. But they use tech. And this tech is really the magical spells. Now, some of it can be real-life spells. You got to remember, generations and people have tapped out into places before that have never been touched. So now in the Ninth Age, they've kind of touched it all. But you're back to the primitive areas, back to where, it's your knights in shining armor, and you're still using some of the tech, but you have no frigging clue what it does. And you're trying to figure it out and work with it. You're not there to design like this factory that's going to produce tech, because it doesn't exist that way. You're trying to figure out what those other 9 ages left behind in those civilizations, and how do I use this? Oh wow, look at this thing in a metal casing with fins on it. What is it? I wonder what happens when I push that button with the little yellow symbols, the 3 yellow triangular symbols on it. You get my meaning with that? Yeah, Fallout reference. Gotta love it. But that's kind of how it is. And so you might find some beam weapons, but they're going to be 1 shot, 2 shots. So your character's not going to run around with a phaser. They're not going to run around with a laser rifle. They might find one, but because of how long it's been around and how many uses, you might get a shot or 2 out of it. And that's it. And you might shoot yourself with it, because you don't know what... You're trying to point and shoot, but you really don't know. And it's so cool because it's such a different feel to it. For me, I like the idea that characters aren't necessarily knowledgeable in what the heck they're doing. They think they are, but they really don't have a reference to base this off of. There are libraries around. There are places you can go in archives, but that knowledge is pretty well guarded. And to get to it, you got to do favors and other things. So it's not going to be this walk in the park to where you just automatically figure everything out. Kind of a cool feel to it. And for me, I like it because it just allows the GM to focus less on knowing every little thing in this book, but you got a simplified system. I mean, look at how simplified this is. This is how simplified armor, weapons, and the tasks are. Now, they've come out with some other books with it, so you can enhance this. But here's your round. And it's pretty straightforward. You're not having to have 10 pages of what do I do. So for those of you that love the sake of role-playing and building the story, and the mechanics to you are a pain in the rear end, it limits you, then go to this. This is definitely going to allow for you to have some flexibilities. And I'm looking forward to it, as I am to, Open Legend. Once I get my books from that, and he's working on it, I know he is. He's done such a great job of promoting that system. I'm going to go through that a little bit and talk a little bit about that. But I love Numenera because it's kind of it is a fantasy, but set in the future. So, sort of Shannara, Elfstones of Shannara, and beyond type of setting. So it's a kind of a fantasy, sci-fi, apocalyptic, just mesh of things. And you can go star traveling. That Monty and Shanna have come up with books. Monty Cook and Shanna Germain. They both have come up with some tremendous books, along with their, the Monty Cook Games folks. Sorry for those of you that I've forgotten in there. I know there's 7 or 8 more of you. But they've compiled a great team that has kickstarted some really wonderful material. And I really do suggest getting it and adding it to your collection. Here's why. Because as a GM, if you're into burnout from having to write up too many pages that have to do with challenge rating and difficulties and other things and hit points and stats and all these other things and all these NPCs, because it's taking you reams of paper to write them up, take a break and play this. This will allow you to refresh. You'll come up with some neat ideas from it. Maybe stuff you can transfer back into your Pathfinder, D&D 5e, or Dungeon World, or 13th Age, or these other systems like Mutants and Masterminds, and into Deadlands Revisited, and into all these other game systems that are much more complex. And it allows you to take that time to be creative and just write up some things, and you can even go with the flow with some things. And the great part is you don't have to write up reams of paper. You just make 3 or 4 pages of notes, and you can put it together and run a ongoing campaign that you just add little pieces of paper to as you go. So I like that, and for me, I'm going to enjoy running it. I think for some of my players are going to enjoy it because it's going to simplify the process of what they want to do. Though I've got a good group that really does like the mechanics of Pathfinder, I think they're going to enjoy a game like this. It'll be a nice little sidelight, fun time that we can do. I can pretty much teach anybody this in a short period of time. That's another thing I love about it. They don't all have to have the core book. I can have the core book, help them through their characters. We just need one book among us, and it's a lot easier. Now, again, they'll want to add, and you guys will, you want to add the player books because they're a shortened version of the core book that you don't need all that knowledge unless you're going to GM, and you can get that, and it's really neat, and it allows you to focus on character play. So the mechanics of it are really cool, and I'm looking forward to it because there's just the world itself is a neat world. And the fact that you can go out among the stars and go to other worlds is cool, too, and other dimensions. So it doesn't limit you at all with what you're trying to do in the system. I think that's it. I'm going to go about 22 minutes in this. I could spend much more, believe me. Once I get done with the core book and the bestiary, I may have more to add in. But I'm going to say now, from this, if I were to grade it on a 5 scale of 5 points for a high, 1 point for a low, I would give it about a 4 to 4.5. I really like it, and I think, coming from me, who's a mechanics guy, I enjoy it. I really enjoyed the read and the understanding of it, and it's pretty straightforward. So, kudos, folks, and get yourself a copy at least and give it a whirl. Thanks, and thanks for tuning in to another GM Tips.